Okay, so I have been getting some requests to do some more beginner videos here. I think there's some of my audience here who's not super familiar with poker, so we're going to start here from square one here. I will assume that you know the rules of the game, and this is only going to be strategy. So if you don't know the rules, go ahead and Google those and then come back here. So what I've done here is I've pulled up I'm pulled up some deck lists here for poker. I don't condemn net decking, nor do I support it really, but this is basically the primary list that you're going to run into here, online or at a casino. Pretty standard deck list here. You have four aces, four kings. These are the strongest cards here, the aces and the kings. Running four of each of those, and then an even distribution of all the suits. And this does sort of create a natural cadence to the game here. We have a sort of a natural, it's like a hierarchy here. So ace is higher than king, king's higher than queen, queen. Each card is higher than the one below it. And so of course ace is, for that reason, ace is the best card in the game. And just to make it even better, they also allowed it to make a bottom end of a straight. So despite just being the highest card in general, it also has another power of making a wheel with ace 2, 3, 4, 5. So they just threw that on top in case it wasn't already OP enough. And then, so in general, you're going to see that high cards are better than low cards because for all reasons, high cards beat low cards. And so pretty much a lot of poker theory is going to be, at least pre-flop theory and showdown theory, is going to come down to having big cards. However, this is where the game gets a little more interesting because poker is ultimately a game of deception. So, if all the cards were face up at all times, then you would always prefer the big cards, like if we were playing chess. But because you have the secret cards, actually you end up... the low cards actually end up having some secret powers sometimes. They end up being very sneaky hands sometimes, and they can outflank the big hands in some very specific scenarios. And so we're going to get to the basic idea here is it's a game of deception and board coverage. So if you go ahead and look at some of these pre-flop charts here, we go ahead and look at one of these under the gun open ranges here. You see that high cards are almost always preferred to low cards. However, there is a little bit of this sneakiness coming in, and that is the value of deception right there. And you may think, why do we play these pre-flop ranges? But essentially, when you play pre-flop poker, what you're doing is you're preparing for a battle. And the battle will take place in all sorts of different areas and all sorts of different places. The battle could occur on the moon. It could occur underwater. It could occur in the desert, on a snowy mountain. And you're preparing your army to have tools to fight in all of those scenarios. So let's go ahead and say under the gun versus big blind. This is a standard battle here. Okay, you need to train yourself, instead of just seeing these cards here, like, oh, they're just cards. No, these are all very specific soldiers, and they're very specific parts of terrain. So when you see these flops that pop out, these are all the different battlefields. This is where you're going to fight. An ace king, you may say ace king, we're fighting on the moon in outer space. You could say on a jack 10-6, this is like we're fighting in the jungle. Okay? 6-4 deuce, you may say we're fighting underwater. And just how if you were fighting underwater, you would want... You may want a submarine. You may want scuba gear. You may want other underwater apparatus. And when you're and so on a board like 6-4 deuce, we could say some of these low cards are actually the most important cards. having a 6-5, a pocket fours, you know, a 4-5, these type of hands, to where you connect on a board like this. That's going to be key. If you're fighting on these outer space hands, though, the ace, ace, king, ace, queen, queen, then those low cards aren't going to be very valuable. And actually, you would prefer to have big cards. Big cards play better on big boards. And because of the natural breakdown of distribution of flops here, it just turns out that there are more big flops than there are little flops. That does not mean that you should neglect the little flops. Let's go ahead and show you here all flops. So if you see this distribution, look how many aces. There's aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens. These are the 10 high flops. It's consumed like 75-80% of the boards already. And then the 5 high, 4 high, 3 high, it's just combinatorically there's just not as many. So these are going to be less important. But, you know, you don't want to show up naked. You don't want to show up, how do we put this? You don't want to show up with scuba gear to the desert. You know, you want to make sure that you're prepared to battle on all boards. And that is why we play pre-flop the way that we do.